So I thought this thing was black tie. And I'm so embarrassed. No. As much respect as I have for the library, and this is my last day as chairman of the library, the tuxedo is actually for my daughter. So we've got a father-daughter high school event at their high school. So I'm going to have to leave here early. I apologize for that. But we've been practicing skits and songs with a number of fathers for the last 6 weeks. Practiced so much you'd think it would be Broadway caliber by now. It is not, but I assure you it'll be. It's going to be really, really special. So, but I'm glad to be here. So thanks for having me. The library. This is the 125th anniversary of the library, which is pretty remarkable and what a history it's had. We celebrated 1894 Day earlier this year in really spectacular fashion, and the town generously really celebrated and signaled how much the library means to them, and so we're grateful for that. But I'm a numbers geek, and so some of the things I want to share with you are just flat out numbers. If you haven't had a chance, grab the annual report. It's amazing. Amanda Goodman puts this together. It is literally like the library. It's half art and half information. It's really just spectacular. So grab it. It's fun to look at, and you'll learn a lot. I promise you, I do every year I read it. So thank you. But here's the numbers, and some of these are in there. This past year, the library had over 350,000 visitors. That's over 1,000 for every day we're open. Just incredible. We loaned out over 600,000 books and other materials. Our study rooms were reserved 6,000 times. And I've done the math. It all checks out, actually. And we support over 100 different book clubs here in town and ran over 1,500 programs that had 70,000 attendees. These are just remarkable numbers for a town of 20,000 people, and really remarkable for the staff. As most of you know, the library is a public-private partnership, which makes it very special, and it has been really since its founding 125 years ago. And so the town supplies the funding for all the salaries and the utilities of the library. The Friends, you all, private citizens, provide the funding for the materials, the programs, the speakers, everything that we have here that really, in a lot of ways, breathes life into the building. I actually kind of like to think about it like the town really gives us the ability to open the doors every day. And for that, we're very grateful. The town is an incredible partner and a great place to live. The Friends, you all, give people a reason to come. And that's really what makes this place special in my mind. The other thing the Friends obviously are responsible for is the capital expenditures. So this incredible building that we're here now 10 years in the building, but that's Friends money that built this entire thing. The generator out back, the geothermal system that was dug up, redug, et cetera, but really does a great job efficiently and responsibly heating and cooling the building. And it's actually, you think of the safe haven aspect of the library, and it's really remarkable. And actually the reason I first got introduced to the library. So my wife and I, Allison, had been in town just a few years. We've got 3 young kids, and there was a big hurricane. Remember all this stuff? This happens every 3 years, it seems like. And so we're without power, and so we brought our little unwashed masses into the library for several days for a little bit of electricity, a little bit of heat, a little bit of Wi-Fi, and community, and it was really remarkable. It's then that I met Louise Berry, and she showed me around, and I was sold. This place is really special. And to me, that's an example of what the library is. I tell everybody, it's not just about books. There are a ton of books here, but the library is not just about books. It's really about information and community. And information is captured and conveyed in different ways through time, and the library adapts to that, and actually, in many ways, evolves way ahead of it. And that's one of the prides of the Darien Library, is the fact that it's often ahead of the time, which really makes it a valuable resource. More on some interesting events, and you could get these in the annual report. I won't tell you everything in there, but through the history, 125 years, the Friends have always been critical, and it's interesting to reflect a little bit. In the 50s, the libraries began showing films on a reel-to-reel projector. In the 60s, brought phonographs to the library, so we weren't always streaming tunes on iTunes. The 70s introduced microfiche reader. When was the last time somebody saw a microfiche reader, right? Can you remember that? You remember those things? Hunting around? The 80s were video cassettes and books on tape. The 90s brought computers and DVDs. And in the early 2000s, the library created the very first tech center. So what did that look like, right? That very different, I'm sure, versus what it looks like today. And in the teens, we've introduced the Seed Library, the museum passes, substantial investments in technology and programming, and expanded all the database offerings. So it's been a really wonderful history, and the Friends really were responsible for a great deal of that. And look, I believe the board and the staff continue to respond and lead the library. And most recently, we've really been focused on a few things. Number one, expanding the breadth and the number of program offerings to, again, now north of 1,500 and 70,000 attendees. The other really important element that the library's done a wonderful job in recently is expanding our relationships with other organizations in town. So we now have partnerships with over 40 organizations in the town, and that really multiplies the power of the organization and the library together and is really valuable. It's been a true honor to be on the board for the last 6 years, and I've had the great fortune to work with a lot of the staff and Alan Gray. Alan is really special, and if you don't know that, get to know him. He really is remarkable. He's incredibly selfless. He's focused, he's strategic, he's disciplined. He has the best interest of the town and the library at all times on his heart. And I'm grateful for his leadership. And the town is really lucky to have him at the helm. Being on the board is a great deal of responsibility. It's a wonderful experience, but it has a responsibility because the library is so important. The library is really important in the community, and it operates magnificently. And so today we're going to introduce some new trustees that we have, and I've got some words of wisdom for them. Don't screw it up. And I'd like to think that I more or less avoided screwing things up here the last 6 years, and I've truly enjoyed playing a very small part in a very special institution. And I know my departing trustees feel the same way. So at this point, I'd like to acknowledge the one departing trustee that is also here. It's just Jan. And we were always there together, right at the head of the table, so this is very fitting in my mind. But Ed Barksdale, who couldn't be here, he's actually out of state, Erica Allen, and Jim Steinthal, who's actually out of country, so he has a very good excuse. But Jan, would you come up at all?
Thank you, my dear.
Thank you.
Thank you. Photo. Don't go yet.
I was going to present it to myself.
I don't think we want to make you present it to yourself. Kevin has been an inspiring leader of the board, from his articulate defense of the library during budget time and everything that he has done to lead us through the last year. So thank you very much.
So much.
We will miss you. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm Jan Smith, and I have the good fortune of representing the nominating committee this year, and so I'm very happy on behalf of the committee to make the presentation of nominees. Joining me on the committee this year were former board chair and friend of the library, Amy Cholnacki, as well as former trustee Todd Raker. Also serving this year, current trustees Jim Steinthal and Alex Ising. So I'd like to thank the committee as we deliberated over the course of the spring and summer. We had a lot of work to do, a lot of diligence, as we had 5 retiring trustees this year. So thank you so much for all your work. On behalf of the committee then, I'm very pleased to present our 5 nominations for board trustees this year for a term ending 2022. Karen Knapp, Rich Mayer, Melissa Noonan, Hutch Pegler, and Kim Westcott. Also nominated for re-election to their second terms expiring in 2023 are current trustees Mike Cipoletti, Allegra Erickson, and Malin Gasserud. At this time, I would ask for a second from the floor. Thank you, Alan. And are there any nominations from the floor? No. With that, then, I would ask, all in favor of the slate as presented? Opposed? Fantastic. Thank you so much. Congratulations and welcome to all our new trustees. And at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce the man that keeps this place humming, our Executive Director, Alan Gray.
Thank you, Jan. The first thing on my notes is to say how great a trustee leader Kevin Gasvoda has been. I've had 20 years of experience with the board, and there have been a serious number of great leaders, some of them in this room. I see Kim Hufford and George Wiper. But Kevin has been an extraordinary leader of the board during the past number of years when the stakes have been quite high with respect to our budget and the capital decisions that we've made. And he has served the community extraordinarily well. I want to thank the 5 board members who are going off as board members who have given 6 years of really great service to the board. It's a pretty selfless job. As Kevin said, there's a great responsibility, and the board here does a fantastic job in meeting the private part of the most successful private-public partnership in the town. The library is a result of many things, but a large part of it is the service and the guidance and the leadership that the board has provided to directors and the staff. Thank you very much. The other group, of course, that I want to thank is you, the Friends of the Library. We truly would not be what we are, the premier library in the state and one of the most successful and revered libraries in the nation, if it weren't for the role that the Friends play. As Kevin says, the town opens the library, and they provide really great support to that. But what the Friends do is they give the extraordinary staff of this library an opportunity to provide a range of services that are beyond what most people would expect when they come to a library. That is the eventual benefit to everyone in this community from the role that those of you who are friends play. If you're not a friend, we know you're a small letter F friend, but please become a capital letter F friend when you have an opportunity. It means a lot to this whole community. The staff in this library, we're open 72 hours a week, so that's twice as long as a normal number of hours in a work week for any standard organization. During that period of time, as Kevin was saying, a really large number of people come in. What this staff is able to do is provide extraordinary customer service at the same time that it is, by any objective measure. I have an MBA, I don't have a library degree, so I also, like Kevin, believe in numbers. By any objective measure, this is the most cost-effective, productive library staff in the state and among the nations. When you look at the numbers that are reported to the federal government, so you can compare libraries across the state and across the country, what this staff does at the same time that is providing customer service that is famous around the country is it does it in a way that is amazingly cost-effective. That's because the Friends, in many respects, have given them the tools to do it, the technology, the self-checks that you see out there. If you've ever had a chance to look at the sorter downstairs, those investments in technology, which any advanced organization would make, are what the Friends make on behalf of this library and on behalf of the town. It allows this library to meet the gold standard of providing extraordinary customer service at the same time of doing it in a cost-effective way. That's what the staff does. I get the opportunity to work with more than 50 people who are staff members, about half of whom are full-time, half of whom are part-time, all of whom are among the most amazing people that you could ever meet. I once, in business a long time ago, someone said, find someone who passes the O'Hare rule. If you've lived in Ohio, you probably know what that, I'm sorry, Illinois, but you know what that means. If you ever get snowed in at O'Hare Airport, the person that you were snowed in with, that you might be there for 3 or 4 hours, is someone you really want to spend a lot of time with. We spend a lot of time together at the library, and they are fun to be with. I was here last night at the movie, and before that, we had a staff get-together. I walk around the library twice a day. The people here are exactly the kind of people that I know you know many of them, some of you may know them personally, but they're the kind of friends that you would have. They would be the people that once you met, they became a lifelong friend. They are lifelong friends to each other. We are a really close group of people, and we have an extraordinary amount of fun. We do really kind of strange things. More than 30 people on this staff are trained to provide first aid with the automatic defibrillators, I'll say that word right. We're the first library in the state of Connecticut that had an automated external defibrillator just in case someone has a heart problem. And we have 3 of them. And we have more than 30 people who are trained to do that. So you're probably safer here than in any other public organization in the town. We don't want you to suffer any kind of acute stress here, which is why we also try to provide great customer service. I want to tell you that a number of staff members are here. I'd like to ask them to rise so we can recognize the best library staff in the country. Thank you very much. I now want to introduce Ken Wiggin, who is the state librarian. He'll be retiring on January 1st. After 21 years as a state librarian, he had been the New Hampshire state librarian before that. He was a librarian before that. He actually served on the board of his local library. So he has seen libraries from a broad range of perspectives. It's no surprise to any of you that the state is not in great financial shape. That, for the last 10 years, has been reflected in the way that when budget decisions are made at the beginning of the state budget process, the state library and all the services it provides have looked at as, well, let's just take some more money from the state library. Connecticut has one of the most sophisticated intra- and interlibrary support activities of any state in the country. It's really innovative, it's really thoughtful, and Ken Wiggin has been the adult in the room when the politicians who say good things, but when their budget comes before them, might not put their money where their mouth is, and between the librarians who want to keep everything, even some of the things that should be prioritized out. It's been Ken Wiggin for the last decade who has done an extraordinary job of meeting the responsibilities of the state librarian. We're very lucky to have him. It will be difficult to lose him. I hope they find someone who is half as accomplished as he is. And I'm really glad he's here, and I think you're going to enjoy what he has to say as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. It's a real privilege to be here this afternoon. You may wonder, since I live north of Hartford, do I ever get down here? Well, actually, over the last 21 years, I've had the privilege of coming down both to the previous building and working with and meeting Louise, and then been here for groundbreakings and all kinds of events. So you have a great facility here, and you've done a wonderful job. And I want to congratulate the new trustees, but I also want to congratulate and acknowledge the ones who are retiring. Being a trustee is one of those really important civic duties that you can perform. In Connecticut, we have very few elected trustees. When I was in New Hampshire, they're all elected. They're the most elected body in the state. But here, you volunteer your time and you do wonderful things. Same with friends. I've been a friend, I've been a trustee, and I've been a librarian, all three sometimes at the same time. To me, it's a three-legged stool. The trustees, the friends, and the staff and director of the library. And when they all work well together and they're all committed, it moves the library from good to great. And you can see that in this library, and I see that in other libraries around the state. And as Alan said, I was a trustee, and I was in a small New Hampshire town library. And, I was at my job at the state library one day, and I get a call from my director saying, we think the library's going to get flooded. You need to get down here right away. And I go, okay. Take off my library hat and get down there as a trustee. Why we ever built a library along the side of a river, I'll never know. Although it was a beautiful spot, sitting out there watching the water flow by, except when you have high rain. So the library did not flood, but I had to do all of that trustee stuff. And I learned a lot as a trustee that helped me as a librarian. And so I've always felt that I could do both jobs. I know we all care about our local libraries for lots of different reasons, and Kevin was articulate, and Alan has been as well. And when I saw Kevin, I got really petrified. I was supposed to come all more dressed up than I was. But anyway, as one of the institutions, community services, that's here to serve everybody. And I think sometimes our policymakers and our funders don't think about that. They know schools. Schools have a finite group of people they work with. And, the fire department, thank God, my father was a fire chief for a long, long time. They're there when you need them, but the library is serving people every day from birth to old age. And we don't care what people's background is. We don't care where you're from. The staff just wants everybody to succeed with their own personal goals. Libraries don't set goals for people. People set their own goals, but the library is here to support that. And if you've seen one library, you've seen one library. Alan talks about, this library is a stellar library, and a lot of libraries look at it, but it's hard to mimic another library because you really need a library that's going to meet the services and the needs of its own community, and that's been done very effectively here. I grew up in a house where my mother was a librarian. I had a choice. Am I going to be a fireman or am I going to be a librarian? I started working in a college library on work study. I said, hey, this is pretty cool. I never knew what my mother did, She came home at night and talked about everything going on in the library, but I really didn't know what it was like. But over the years, I developed a real love for libraries and got very involved in libraries. And when I look back at my mother's library, she's still alive, in her 90s now, but that library was not her mother's library. And when she retired, it wasn't even her library. She had torn it down and rebuilt it twice in her career. Libraries are always changing, and they transform themselves over and over. This library is 125 years old. The state library is over 160, almost 70 years old. They're not the same institutions they were when they opened their doors. And I don't need to remind you that we live in a time when public institutions, the state library in particular, are under enormous pressure, politically, socially, and financially. And I don't think that's going to get any better in the short term, and maybe not even in the long term. But libraries are, we find in study after study, they're like one of the most respected organizations, or community services there are. Librarians, my colleague up in Maine did a study a few years ago. Librarians had great respect and were trusted, and I think that's what helps keep our libraries moving. Ever since the development of the internet and the World Wide Web, and I don't think many young people know that when they type in a URL, www stands for World Wide Web. But I've always kept a memo that when I was state librarian, I sent to my staff, my reference staff, and I said, please tell me what this thing called the internet is. It was a very simple question, but many of us, Alan goes back a few years too. When you think about how libraries have changed, when I started library work, there was no internet. There were a lot of these things weren't even thought about. We thought about the great things we'd like to do, but we didn't know how we were going to do them. Well, that has changed to the point that I get asked by a lot of policymakers, selectmen, legislators. So we have this thing called the internet. Why do we need libraries? And I have to over and over explain that, just take a look at your Google search results. It takes 2 pages now almost to get to real stuff. It's ads, ads, ads. Google's driving what they want you to see. Ask Alexa. I hate it when my grandkids ask Alexa things. I can do that better and faster. I can get you better information. And libraries are really about that. We can provide the trusted information you need. It's vetted. We can help you navigate through the internet. My family used to be amazed how my wife and I could get answers out of Google much faster than they could, because we knew how to construct a search. We knew what we were asking it, and they didn't. But libraries have assumed this role of being a responsible source of information. Now, libraries have never been, we used to talk about libraries as the reference center. Well, reference work isn't, or answering questions hasn't always been the forte of libraries, but helping people get the information they need is. So I think there's a distinction there that we always need to think about. And cleaning out my office files, which, when you've lived in the same room for 21 years, you got a lot of stuff. And I'm not allowed to bring a lot of it home. My wife says, no, it's not coming home. And the archivist wants certain things out of my file. So I've been going through a lot of things. And I came across a bunch of speeches, and over the 20 years, I've given a lot of speeches on the future of libraries. Some of them were quite pithy, but reading back, they're going, well, that didn't happen. One of my favorite ones was I was talking about the coming wave of retirements in the library community. I did all my statistics, I did all this stuff. I didn't know we were going to have a recession the next year and no one was going to retire. So it is happening, though. It is happening. But looking back, and I didn't always know what the future was going to be, and I really don't know now exactly what we may be facing in the future. But I do know that successful libraries will be the ones that truly understand the role that the library plays in their community and in society at large. That role is not to merely be a free alternative to Amazon or bookstore or other media outlets. Books in all formats will always be important, a part of a library and what a library is. But it isn't the defining aspect of a library. And I have to keep reminding people, it's not just about the books. The books and other resources in the collection support the recreational and educational reading and information needs of the community. Yeah, we get that, and that's always going to be there. But as I was reflecting back on this, I really came across, I think, 2 areas where I think libraries can step it up a little and will be critical as we move into an unknown future. One of those is being a strong influencer. You hear that all the time. So-and-so's an influencer, so-and-so's an influencer. Well, Oprah's really good at making unknown authors into bestsellers. But librarians can also and should be using their voices and their respected place in society to introduce communities to authors that don't make the bestseller lists and don't make it onto the talk shows. Today's libraries, shouldn't be just about getting bestsellers into the public's hands. But what they need to do is surface and shine a light on the hundreds of authors who have powerful voices on the page, but they just don't have powerful voices in the media. And I think that's a real opportunity for libraries as we move forward. Secondly, libraries need to step up their game when it comes to their role in lifelong learning. Many of you have probably heard the expression, the People's University. And if you go back in the history of libraries, there have been times when we really embraced this educational role. In fact, some urban libraries used to actually provide all kinds of classes and coursework, particularly for new Americans coming in. Where were they going to learn all of this? Well, we've expanded our education system since then, and over time this role has waxed and waned. But I really think that this is an important place for us to be today and moving into the future. Our libraries connect people to the information they need throughout their lives. I mentioned earlier, we're serving, from birth to death practically, and meeting those customer needs across the life cycle through both an online and an offline touch points is essential if our libraries are to succeed. We often, in the library world, we have these slogans like, libraries change lives. Because I had one person say to me, so who asked you? But really, I prefer to to say that changing lives need libraries. You don't know when you're going to need the next piece of information. So today, continuing education is a survival tool, and our library programs need to support that need. And this is a wonderful place for the library to become fully engaged with their community. At the State Library, through our Division of Library Development, we have identified a series of literacies that we think are critical and will be on an ongoing basis. And we provide a lot of training for school, public, and academic libraries. But let me go through those literacies. First, there's basic literacy. All of us understand that. We want the residents of Connecticut, you want the residents of your town here in Darien, to foster a trained and skilled workforce that contributes to the economic growth, not only of your community, but of the state as well. Then there's early literacy for families and young children, so that children will start school with early literacy skills necessary for grade level success. Libraries have an awful hard time connecting and partnering with schools. I don't know what it is, but they build these barriers around there, and they don't think libraries really play this role. And we have worked hard over the years to say, yes, we do. We are doing evidence-based work with our children. Our children's story hours are not just come, sit on my lap and I'll read a book to you. They're really powerful. And so early literacy is one of those that libraries have always had a role in. I think we can step it up a little. Then there's civic and social literacy, so that our citizens will have the knowledge and skills they need to improve their lives, participate and contribute effectively in their communities, and connect with one another through dialogue. We all know we're living in a time when we're becoming more and more into our own little silos, or we don't have this ability anymore to just talk to each other about things. And I think libraries can help us better understand how to move forward in this. Libraries are great forums. There are very few places in a community anymore where you can bring people together, no matter what their politics, no matter what their beliefs, and try to have a conversation. So libraries can do a lot in this role. And then there's digital literacy. We want the residents of our state and our communities empowered to access information electronically, use and share information, create original content, evaluate the value of the information, and to make informed decisions to fully participate in a digital society. I think all librarians know that the internet's not going away. It's a wonderful tool, but it's one that we need to help people to better understand how they're going to use it. And in fact, to help them use it to become, start a new business or to communicate. I remember, my father was terrible with a remote control, and he would call up one of his granddaughters, one of my girls, and say, I can't figure out how to change the channel. So she would over the phone. She was great at, that kind of work. But, every technology is different. And I often hear people say, well, we have this born digital generation. I'm sorry, nobody is born into that. They're going to have to change, because the technology that was there when they were born isn't going to be the technology that they're going to face as they get older. There's a lot of technology that has come and gone in my life, and there are some things. We were cleaning out, or actually we're doing a program at the library the other day on how to take care of your personal papers and all of your media, and how are you going to save this for future generations in your family. And we were looking at floppy disks. There's probably a few people in the audience who don't even know what a floppy disk is. And then there's 3/4 inch. There's all these different sizes. And I forget it was Alan or Kevin that was talking about, microfiche. Well, at the State Library, we used to have a lot of microfiche readers because the government put out a lot of stuff on microfiche years ago, and we're not going to scan everything. Everybody says to me, aren't you just going to scan everything in the library? We have 2 million items in the library. We're not scanning them all. But we are providing access to those things as people need them and want them. But digital literacy is really critical. And then there's financial literacy. Again, we want residents to have the knowledge and skill to become informed consumers, grow and manage wealth, foster innovation and entrepreneurship, which will contribute to the economic development, not only of the community, but of the state. Think again about financial literacy through the life cycle. So your kids are going to learn what to do with an allowance. You know, that's a real beginning skill set. And then your teenagers, how are they going to handle money? And then you go off to college, and that's a whole new, wow, I didn't know, Mom, send more money. You know, I got to learn how to manage my money. Then you get married, and you have kids, you know, and then you get ready to retire like me. You know, all of those stages have a different level of financial literacy that you need to keep coming back to it. What I learned in Economics 101 in college has no bearing on the world today. So that's an important one. Health literacy is probably, you know, again, right up there where libraries, and I noticed you have a wall here that's dedicated to some of that. But how do we get people to get the best information they can to help them manage their well-being and be empowered to become effective partners with their healthcare providers? And here's a case where, you know, libraries not only, they can't do it all themselves, but they can partner with local organizations. When I was younger librarian and I was out there trying all these new things, I saw all these kids coming to story hour, and I said, this is great. Look at all these kids that come to story hour. And I was talking to the visiting nurses, and they were doing a series of inoculations for, I forget what it was now. And I said, you know, I have all these kids coming to the library. What a great opportunity. Then I started seeing crying kids leaving the library. I go, now, that was a bad idea. We will show them how to go get that information, but we're not going to do clinics at the library. That was, you know, a real learning experience. But there are opportunities for libraries to really, you know, get involved in this. And then there's legal literacy. We live in a world where the laws and regulations are all around us, and we want our residents to have increased access to justice and the knowledge and skills they need to effectively navigate legal resources and services. Librarians cannot, even if you have a JD, you cannot practice law in a library, and we don't do that. The state library is also the principal law library for the state. My librarians are very skilled in helping people find and get through the laws, federal, state, whatever. But we can't provide legal advice, but we can link you up to legal clinics, we can give you information and build the resources that people need. And then it's not really a literacy, but there's also STEM out there. And I know it's big in our schools, and I have colleagues who say it should be STEAM as well as STEM. You know, we can throw the arts into everything. I'm good with that. But I think that, again, you know, the schools don't own it. Libraries have an important place in helping our students. We have a lot of homeschooled students in Connecticut. We have people that may not have great libraries in some of the schools they go to. So the library can really step in and step up for that. So these are all lifelong skills. And I believe that if libraries build services around these important and transformative life skills, that they will thrive and their communities will thrive and their residents will thrive. So I leave you tonight, and I leave my position as positive about the future of libraries as I was when I started my career. Now, my wife will tell you I'm a Pollyanna. She says, I don't know how you always have so much optimism, but that's how I get through life. But I really think in all of the years, and I reflect back on my career and looking even further back, I think there's a great future for libraries. And I know that libraries can step up if they just really begin to focus on those. So again, I thank you for supporting your library, and I will never stop being an advocate for libraries, and I hope you won't stop advocating for libraries either. Thank you very much. That's the other, the embarrassing thing is I go all around the state, and people unfortunately don't know their state library, and part of that is we need to do a better job of marketing it. The state library is in the State Library Supreme Court building across the street from the Capitol. It was opened in 1910. It was built as a Beaux-Arts style building. It is one of the most magnificent public buildings in Connecticut. If you ever get up there, I hope you will see it. It is a beautiful, beautiful building. I don't think you would ever build one today. The State Library and that facility includes a great history and genealogy service, collections. We have probate records that go way back. We collect a lot of the probate records from the probate courts. We also have, we're a federal depository, actually a regional depository for Rhode Island and Connecticut, so we get all the federal information in all different formats, and we have access to a lot of federal information you don't have ready access to, as well as state documents and municipal documents. We also have, as I said, we're the principal law library for the state, so we have a large collection of, we support the courts, we also support the self-represented in the state. People come to us, a lot of law firms use our resources. Some of our things are available online and some are not. We're also the state archives, so our collection goes back prior to being a state. We have a lot of early colonial records. The famous charter is in our building in a beautiful glass case. We also have the fundamental orders, which are there, and they're lovely, but they're in early English, and you can't really read them, but they're there. And both constitutions, the engrossed copies of both. So we have those. We also have the Museum of Connecticut History, which focuses mostly on military, industrial, and political history. We collect a lot of machinery, not all on display, but we're preserving it for the future. So when companies go out of business or did over the years, we acquired things that either were made in Connecticut and fueled the industry around the country, or they were part of making things that Connecticut is known for. So we have a lot of that material. And we have a lot of manufactured goods. So, you know, any company in Connecticut that ever made anything, we probably have it. We have this wonderful Art Deco collection of toasters. And whoever knew they made so many variations of toasters? But Universal was a large company. We have a lot of really cool stuff. And some of it you'll recognize, you know, there's a lunchbox you may have had when you went to school, made in Connecticut. So very cool stuff. I'm responsible for all the public records in the state. Both state records and municipal records. So we get in a lot of, you know, reminding people that you have public records, they have to be available. We do a lot of work with all of your town clerks to preserve the land records of the state. We have some of the best land records in the country, but that also, those land records represent your basic wealth. And we are very cautious of that and cognizant of that. We don't want anything to happen to those records. So we actually have a small amount of money that goes to municipalities every year. It comes from a recording fee. If you've done any land transaction, you pay, well, it's now $10. But we get a portion of it. Your town clerk gets a portion of it. Unfortunately, the general fund gets a portion of it now too. But that goes back to municipalities to help them do work to make sure their records are in good shape. So and then we also have the Division of Library Development, which provides a lot of different services around the state, including our delivery service. We do statewide licensing for a lot of online databases that you have access to, a lot of other services. So we're very large. Our responsibilities are huge. And I started with 120 people, I'm down to 80 people. And our budget has shrunk like by 30%. And I sit there, Alan's right, I was at a legislative hearing recently, the last budget cycle. And, you know, I love this one legislator. She speaks so well about us, and she's really good, but she never goes the extra step and says, we're going to get you more money. Never get that part. And so this year, all I did was ask for some money back, not new money. We have a little success here and there, but it is difficult because, you know, the state has a lot of other priorities. And even though the library's been there before most of the state agencies ever came into existence, and we back them all up by keeping all of their records, we're kind of the little stepchild out there. So, but if you ever get up to Hartford, please come and visit. We're open Tuesdays through Saturday. Saturday is great because it's good parking. You can park anywhere. Don't come on race day. But other than that, we're in good shape. So thank you for asking the question. Yes? Yeah, it's funny. We go back and forth about the name. You know, and yes, from the Greek, that's what it means. But when you think about the early libraries in Athens and in Alexandria and other places, they didn't really have books. They had information on tablets and papyrus. And so we've kind of, you know, focused around the book. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the library is so much more. But the name library resonates with people. And schools went through this. They used to have the school library. I know what that is. Then they started calling them the media center. You know, what's the media center? Oh, that's just where I get all my media. No, and so now they've gone back to being libraries again because they get more respect from their building superintendents and principals than they, you know, as being a library. I think we keep, as a profession, redefining what it is. I think programs and access to the arts, visually, in person, is just as important as taking out a large coffee table art book. Or listening to a recording of an opera or a singer. I mean, I think libraries can bring all that experience to people outside of just the traditional book. The book is still important, and I get a lot of criticism when I talk about it isn't just about the books. But think about it today. We're also, though, challenged by this digital world, and one of the struggles libraries are facing is in ebooks, because an ebook is not, it's not copyrighted, it's licensed. And somehow the publishers got around copyright, which allows us, the only reason we get to loan books to you all is because of the first principle of copyright allows us to loan those things. And the ebooks are licensed. So Alan has to pay 3 and 4 times what you pay as a consumer. And now we've got Macmillan Publishing, which has decided that libraries should only be able to buy 1 copy of an ebook for 6 months after publication, because we're ruining it for authors. And I was on a panel in Chicago this year. I was really upset about this. You know, most authors don't make a lot of money, you know, unless you're John Grisham or somebody like that. You know, you don't make a lot of money. But publishers have also gotten their authors to sign these deals that practically give away their rights to their ebooks. So they're not making a lot of money, but they're blaming libraries. And, you know, this is a battle. I mean, at the State Library, I decided we're gonna boycott Macmillan. They're, you know, embargoing us, we're gonna boycott them. So we've stopped spending any money with Macmillan. Not that it's gonna make a big deal with them, but, you know, it's a point. And so libraries are gonna be struggling, I think, with some of this technology to make sure we still have access to it. I would really like to see Congress decide that any ebook is going to be under copyright, because, you know, the first sale doctrine, then we could loan them to you. You know, I think about book sales, and, you know, Friends have these wonderful book sales, but I'm not sure what those are going to look like in 20 years. But the one thing I know you're not going to be able to sell at a book sale is an ebook. You know, can't do that. You can't even donate your ebook to a library, because that's breaking the law. So that's a whole nother, I got off a tangent there, but that gets me upset about that. But no, I think libraries have a variety. I mean, I could go, I said, you've seen one library, you've seen one library. I travel to libraries all over the state. And what I see there is a reflection of what the community is looking for in their library. In some cases, there may be no other institution in that town that can carry on some of the services the library has chosen to do, and the town is willing to support. I think, you know, librarians are really creative people, and I'm amazed at the new services they come up with. You know, maker spaces, and maker spaces are, you know, again, there's no cookie cutter. You know, I know one library that the knitting circle is their makerspace concept, you know, and there's others that it's an entrepreneurial place to get together and do work. And libraries are taking down walls and barriers and putting, you know, all their furniture on wheels. So, you know, look at your kids in high school. You know, first they're with this group one day and another group with others. Now they can move around the library and be with whatever group they want, you know, as they want. That's cool. So, yes, it's not about just books anymore, but they're still there. Our oldest book at the State Library is from the 1400s. So. It's an early compilation of laws. Yeah, it's boring as hell. But I love saying I have it, you know. But it's boring, you know. Ken, thank you very much. You're welcome. Thank you.